Good morning, everybody, and I want to just say I hope everybody's blessed out there. I'm going to be starting a new series, and I'm basically going to be walking through the book of Genesis with you, talking about the wisdom that's in the book of Genesis. We're going to be starting with the creation story, and that's the part I'm going to be talking about. And so today we'll be starting with chapter 1, going from verses 1 to verse 5. And so I'm going to go ahead and read that in Hebrew so you can hear what it sounds like. בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום, ורוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני המים. ויאמר אלוהים יהי אור ויהי אור, וירא אלוהים את האור כי טוב, ויבדל אלוהים בין האור ובין החושך. ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום, ולחושך קרא לילה, ויהיה בבוקר יום אחד. So some very specific things that are being talked about here. First off is the word bara, which is a very unique Hebrew word, which there's several words for creation. I've spoke about this in other videos. One is bara, which means ex-Nihilo. The next level is yotzer, which means to form out of something. And the next one is asa, which means to make out of a composite of different things. So with that said, we see that in the very first, in the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. The commentary that I'm reading from states, we begin the study of Torah with the realization that Torah is not a history book. Okay, this is not a history book per se, but a character of man's mission in the universe. Okay, thus Rashi explains that the Torah's narrative of creation establishes that God is the sovereign of the universe. This is why it's important. This is why it's put first. Rashi's saying basically, why would a religion of law not start off with a law? Why do we not start off the book, the Torah, with God's word, with the book of Leviticus, which is all about Jewish laws? No, the idea is that it's to show us that God is sovereign over all of this world. The Torah relates the story of the 6 days of creation, Ex-Nihilo, to refute the theories that claims that the universe came into being through some massive coincidence or accident. Okay, basically to refute the whole idea of the Big Bang. Okay, the story of creation speaks only in general terms because its primary purpose is to state that nothing came into being except at God's command. Okay, so God speaks it into existence and then it comes into existence. And Genesis chapter 1 is very specific about this. Okay, so going with the first phrase there, Bereshit bara Elohim, is commonly rendered, in the beginning God created, okay, which would indicate that the Torah is giving the sequence of creation, that God created the heaven and then the earth, darkness, water, light, and so on. However, Rashi and Ibn Ezra, these are both great scholars in Judaism, maintain that this verse cannot be chronological. Our translation follows their view. Okay, the name Elohim denotes God in his attribute of justice. Okay, Midinat Hadin, as ruler, as lawgiver, as judge of the world. You see what I'm saying? So they're saying that. And there's a passage in Proverbs that says that this alludes to only two places that I've seen that has this first phrase coming up saying Bereshit, like that, because it commonly would be Bereshona or Bereshon, but here it says Bereshit. A very unique grammatical thing going on here, and that tells us to look at this passage a little bit more carefully. So the only other place where there's the word Bereshit is at the beginning of wisdom. Okay, Bereshit Chochmah. And that passage in Proverbs that talks about the beginning of wisdom, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That Bereshit, what it's talking about is an illusion. And what it's saying is, with wisdom did God create the universe. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of linking two verses together and saying, hey, look at this verse and then go and look at this verse. And you see their connection, and they're connected through this word. And so we see that God basically, and this is an interpretation of some of the scholars and the sages, this is God basically is telling us that with everything in mind, God saw the end, and then God created everything. Okay? Ex-Nihilo. He created these items. You see, this is where I want to focus on. He created these items, because not all items are created ex nihilo. Some items in the universe are obviously created yotzer or asa. But the first one created ex nihilo, bara. So God created the heavens and the earth, bara. It means the raw elements, basically. The earth was without form, and there was darkness upon the face of the deep. Okay, now here's a very important word, thought to think about. There's darkness upon the face of the deep. There was darkness. So wait a second. Where was the light? There was darkness before there was light. You see what I'm saying? And that's where a lot of people have a hard time. In the book of Isaiah, it talks about God says, I form the light and create the darkness. See, he uses those words, Yotzer to form, and bara to create. He creates the darkness. See, the darkness is created first. And if anybody ever knows, like a pair of nods, like soldiers wear nods, you pick up infrared light. In other words, with our light, we can't see out there. It's all darkness. But there's still light in the darkness, okay? So there is an aspect to the light that is there in the darkness. We can't see it. And so what happens is that God formed the darkness, which I believe myself, God formed the electromagnetic spectrum. And then what happens is he formed the light out of that electromagnetic spectrum. You see what I'm saying? So there's different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that affect different creatures in this world. And so that's why you see he forms the light out of that darkness. And for us humans, that we don't actually get this aspect of it until we're formed on the sixth day. So that's just very unique and very, very awesome. So we see that there are some very primal elements. We see that there's some very primal elements going on here, and in what God is creating. Now God saw that the light was good, and so God used it to separate the light from the darkness. You see, so here we see what's really going on is he's separating the electromagnetic spectrum and how this electromagnetic spectrum is going to work throughout the rest of the time. You see, so that's something unique there that the ancient sages wouldn't have understood very well, because we're just coming into this understanding in the past couple hundred years or so, 100, 150, 200 years. Okay, so, but God sees that it's good. And then God calls out that he's going to call light day, and he's going to call darkness night. Okay, and it says this is evening and this is morning, day one. And there's a couple important lessons here too. There was evening and there was morning, day one. Okay, so how do we determine what is light and what is day? Night and day. Well, night and day is not determined by the sun. Night and day is determined by the rotation of the planet of the Earth. That's how night and day actually are determined. You see what I'm saying? The sun is out there, and we face the sun, right? But as the planet rotates, that's what hits the light, and then that's what causes day and night. So the concept for day and night is already there, even though the sun isn't created until the fourth day, because the planet itself is in rotation. God sets it in rotation on the first day. He creates it on the first day and sets it in rotation on the first day. And then that would be. Now, just another thing to talk about, two items to close out this video, and that is scientists want us to believe that Scripture is incompatible with science, and there's a lot of people out there that don't want to accept Scripture, say, well, it doesn't line up with science, and look at these inaccuracies. Well, first off, okay, if you Rambam, great scholar, great scientist, once said, great Rabbi, he once said that we're looking at it wrong. You can't extrapolate back to the beginning of time. You see what I'm saying? You can't just go back and say, okay, we're going to start here, and we're going to extrapolate back, and we're going to get to a starting point, okay? Because he uses the analogy like this. You have a 5-year-old child, right? And you look at the child, and you go backwards to the growth of the child. There's going to be a point where it's not going to make sense. And why is it not going to make sense? Because the womb that the child is born in, and that first 9 and a half months, is its own system, and it's a different system. You see what I'm saying? So what Rambam is saying is that creation itself, the 6 days of creation itself, is its own system over here. And then once everything came into existence, it takes on new laws and rules. Just as a child in the womb during those 9 and a half months, 9 to 9.5 months, are functioning under a certain set of physical laws. Once the child is born and comes out of the womb, then those laws change for that child. For example, when the child is in the womb, the child is breathing through the umbilical cord, getting all the nutrition through the umbilical cords, and the lungs haven't even expanded. Once a child comes out, bam, the lungs have to expand, and now all of a sudden the child is breathing. If the child stops breathing, boom, the child will die. So automatically, you have two sets, and that's what Rambam is saying. There's two sets. The 6 days of creation stand upon themselves, and then everything else taking place after the 6 days of creation is something different. And so this causes something else to happen. If you were to build a time machine and go back to the past and stand in front of Adam and say it's the 8th day of creation, that means he would be starting his 3rd day, and you say to him, Adam, okay, you're created on the 6th day, right? Boom, 6th day, the 7th and 8th. Okay, you gotta, it's past Sabbath, so it's the 8th day. We'll go back on the 8th day, and we say that we arrive there, and we say to Adam, we say, Adam, how old are you? He's going to say, this is my 3rd day, starting my 3rd day. And you're going to look at him and say, what, are you nuts? You're lying to me. You're like, what, 18, 19? There's no way. Well, yeah, it's his 3rd day. See, the point that's being made is that when God created everything, he created it in its mature state. And as he created it in its mature state, it will have evidence or appearance of what would be a mature state, not an immature state, not a growth state, but a mature state. So Adam was created in a mature state. So therefore, Adam would be a young adult on day 3. You see what I'm saying? And thus, as we see with Adam, we will see with the rest of God's creation. It might have indicators that seem older in time, but the chronology of it is set at a certain time. So there's 2 ages that we're looking at. And if you're trying to say these 2 ages are the same age, that's where it falls apart. See, and science wants to say that these 2 ages are the same age. They don't want to take into consideration these 2 aspects, the creation of the womb type of concept, and then the 2 different ages. But when you put them together, things start to open up and things start to make sense. And that's where I'm standing here with this. Also, we have a lot of people say that, oh, it's 1 day, it could be just a time period. Well, I disagree with that too, because it's very specific in the words that it uses. It says Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi. See, it uses Yom Echad because there is no day before it. And it is starting with, it says day 1. It doesn't use, it says 1 day. It doesn't use day 1, day 2, like let's going to start a series and start day 1, day 2. No, it says day 1, and that's to tell us there is no other day before it. It is only day 1, okay? And this lines up with the creation. This story lines up with the tabernacle in the wilderness when the Jews were in the wilderness. When they were building the tabernacle in the wilderness, it's a series of days, and it says day 1, day 2, day 4. Now there it says Yom Rishon. Here it says Yom Echad. And the rest of the days are the same because it's a sequential order. Now, why is this important? This is important because to get a real glimpse into the Jewish world, to get a real glimpse into how God created everything, these are 2 parallel stories. To understand how does one keep the Sabbath? To keep the Sabbath is based off of the days of creation. You see what I'm saying? So, we do not, in order to keep the Sabbath, we do not do things that were done in the creation of the tabernacle in the wilderness. Because these 2, the ancients saw these 2 things as being linked. Okay? So, whatever man did to create the tabernacle in the wilderness, that is considered work. Just as whatever God did to create the universe, that is considered work for God. So whatever man did to create the tabernacle in the wilderness, that is considered work for man. And these 2 concepts are linked together. Therefore, God says to rest on the Sabbath day. Therefore, we do not do the things that were done in the creation of the tabernacle in the wilderness. And so that's a unique concept. And I hope that helps open up some people's understandings. And I hope to dive into some more as soon as I can. And I hope that blesses you. And I hope there's some takeaways that you can have with that. And I just pray that you're blessed and you continue to be blessed and you have a wonderful day. Thank you.